Okay, so a few days ago, Stephen Spoonamore made a Substack post called Duty to Warn Letter to VB Harris. In the post, he basically claims that there might have been voter interference in favor of Trump. And his main claim, if you look down here, is that in swing states there are way too many bullet ballots. And in Arizona, 7.2% of Trump's total vote is from bullet ballots. And in Nevada, it's 5.5%. Which is like, okay, some random data. What does it actually mean? And if you look here, we have a visual representation of the same data. Essentially, here is what percentage of votes were bullet ballots, and here's the state. And according to this data, if it's true, then yeah, it does seem like something is weird, because if you look at Trump's bullet ballots, there are way more than for Harris. But the problem is we can't actually get that data. That data is not available yet. So the way that Spoonamore tries to estimate how many there are is taking how many people voted for president minus how many people voted for senator. Which is again like, okay, maybe you can do it, maybe you can't. I don't know. Like, why can we do that? And the answer is we actually can't, because in this list, there are both people who shouldn't be there and there are not people who should be there. So, for example, a person who voted for Trump and for House Representative, that person is in this list, even though they shouldn't be. While a person who voted just for, let's say, third-party president, they are not in this list, but they should be in this list. So this data basically underestimates and overestimates the people at the same time. So we can't really get an accurate measure of how many bullet ballots there are. And on top of that, I haven't actually checked where this data comes from, but if this data is appropriate, then I have no idea why Stephen Spoonamore decided to call these votes bullet ballots. Because if these are actually bullet ballots, this is just bullshit. This comparison makes no sense. But if this is the same method of president minus senator just in 2020, then okay, that makes sense, but why call it bullet ballot? And that's like the first thing that I noticed when I started looking here, is that why do this? Like, it seems like, yeah, like a weird thing to do if you have actually like real data that presents something real. And okay, but let's see, how can we test this? So for example, we could try to do the same thing, but instead of using president minus senator, we use president minus House representative, right? Okay, so for that, I have a nice Excel ready. And here we can see that 2024, yes. And we have how many people voted for president, how many people voted for House, Democrats and Republicans. And here we can see the difference. And the percentage of the total vote. In Arizona, it seems like Spoonamore's data still holds, and Republicans, Trump has gotten way more than Kamala. But if you look down, there starts to become a problem, right? Because in Georgia, that's no longer the case. In Georgia, now Kamala has gotten way more bullet bullets than Trump. There's a lot of data. I'm not going to go through all of it. This is also not all of the states, but here we can see the swing states, and we can see that Trump got 2.5% of his votes as bullet ballots, while Kamala got 6%. And if we use the same logic that Spoonamore is using, we suddenly get opposite results. Just take a bit different data, right? And this data, I would argue, is actually better to use, because in 2024, every single state, every single ballot had a House representative on it. But not every single ballot had senator on it. So why choose the data that has less data points? That's like curious, right? You would think that he would, if he was trying to actually tell a real story, he would pick the one that has more data points, instead of trying to cherry pick data to get something he wants to see, right? And on top of that, I can go back to Chrome. And on Chrome, there is, let's see, New York, right? How many people voted for senator in New York, and how many people voted for Donald Trump in New York? And I'm not going to do the calculations right now, you can do it yourself, but the result is that 8%, which is actually greater than what you would get in Arizona. So this relationship about too many bullet ballots, it can actually be observed in New York. And New York is clearly not a swing state. So why cheat there? What's the point of someone cheating in New York, right? So at this point, it feels like the Spoonamore's data, it is cherry picked at best. And maybe like fabricated. Okay, I'm not going to say fabricated because I haven't checked this. I assume this is real. I assume that all of his data is real, just cherry picked. So at this point, like that the letter seems like, okay, maybe it's not worth listening to this guy. But I wanted to know more. I dig deeper just to see if there is any more value to this. Okay, one movie magic later, here are some of the factual claims that I wanted to go over that I thought were interesting. So together there are three things that I wanted to go through. And one is that these machines are surprisingly vulnerable if you have physical access to them. Two is that these machines sometimes connect to the internet. And three is that Trump's team has had access to these machines for about 3 years now. And the first interesting article is by J. Alex Helderman, who is a professor at University of Michigan. And here, if you go to page 10, we can see him describe how easy it was to access these machines without needing to know the passwords. Essentially, for Windows, he could use a known technique exploit, and for the dsuit application, since he already had free access to database, he could simply change the password hashes in the database and use the new password that he just set. And he could easily access all of those things. And this is surprisingly simple. Like, this is the kind of stuff you can teach a person who is like okay at computers to do in like 20 minutes. Yeah. And the next thing is that there was Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio already installed on the device, which seems like it shouldn't be the case. Because if we look here from the same article, we see that, like most Michigan counties, Antrim outsources these steps to a service provider, in this case Grand Rapids-based Election Source, which is a company which provides these election packages which deal with database and how the scanners interact with database, essentially so that all the database stuff is done by someone else and not the poll workers. So the poll workers have no reason to access databases with Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. They just use the interface provided by whichever is the maker of the voting machine. So this is one thing that seems like that it shouldn't be there. That's like extra security vulnerability that shouldn't be there. And along with this, about these election packages, the reason why there were problems in Antrim County is because there were these ballot package revisions. At first, the ballots looked a bit different, so they sometimes near the election they changed them after the testing, and they didn't test them again. And because of these changes, when you scan your ballot, if you choose one thing, you actually choose something else. This time it was human error, but technically such approach could be used to change election outcomes in many counties at once. So if you get access to any of these election package makers, providers, you can change how the scanners read the ballots in many places at once without ever stepping foot in them, which is a way that Spoonamore claims that these elections might have been tampered with. And if that is the case, if there is an easy solution, you can simply count the votes again and see if they match what has been provided by the computer. And if they match, there was no issues. If they don't match, there were some issues. And it's an easy fix. So yeah, and for this, I would say that it's possible that it's worth to say that, okay, let's recount just for this. This is already pretty reasonable to say, even if we don't have any data supporting that maybe this is good enough to see, but maybe we should. Okay, And next then is this. This I already talked about. And yeah, next is the internet access. So one of the people who say that he has found internet access from these machines is this person. He says that he has found them on the internet, 35 of these machines. But I personally couldn't find much about this, so I'm not sure what exactly he found. So it's possible that what he found is like not a big deal, or it's a big deal. I don't know, because this doesn't actually mention, and I couldn't find anything about how he did it. Like there's very little about him that you can find. But regardless, they do access internet. They have access. It's not a disputed thing. Here we have another statement but this is like from like a Trump guy, but it doesn't matter. Who shows this thing that they have 4G cards inside. That's fine. No one disputes it. This company says that they have. He also claims that they have these IP addresses inside, which are from Germany and Taiwan, and they are in unallocated spaces, essentially. And those are the spaces that are ready to be overwritten, basically. So, which means that this IP address doesn't mean much. It just means that at some point, this machine got connected to these IP addresses. Then, in the manufacturing process, it's possible that they connected. Then that data technically got partitioned such that it can be deleted, and you don't have to worry about it. And it just no one has since overwritten it. Yeah. Okay, and there is the same thing here, that it's possible for these machines to connect, and that it is a security issue. So this is pretty much, how to say, bipartisan acknowledgement that these machines can do it. It's a problem, because this person is a Trump person, I'm pretty sure. I would say that this person is either unaffiliated or more Democrat, because if you look at his Wikipedia page, he called for voting to be checked in 2016 when Trump won first time. Checked in favor of Hillary. So yeah. And okay, and lastly, the one thing that I want to go through is that Trump's team has had access to these machines for a while. This is Benjamin R. Cotton, who was hired by Stephanie Lambert to essentially examine these machines. And he somewhere here says that he had... Okay, here, so I found it here. He has access to multiple of these machines from ESNS and from Dominion. I'm pretty sure this is Dominion. So he had access to both of these. And to give some connection to Trump, this is person, Benjamin R. Cotton. He was provided data by Stephanie Lambert, who is a known pro-Trump lawyer and who has been charged with illegal acquisition of these machines. So yeah, so I'd say there is no reason to assume that Trump hasn't had access to these machines. Okay, so in conclusion, I would say that there are enough vulnerabilities to these machines that the recount is warranted. But I would also say that Stephen Spoonamore is someone who I wouldn't personally trust. The way that he uses data seems very selective and very manipulated, where he uses only the data that he knows will tell the story that he wants and ignores all other data. That's my impression of him right now. So if there is anything else in the future that he posts, I would be very cautious about believing his conclusions. And yeah, okay, bye bye.